Okay, moving right along here. The chair calls up H.R. 3537, the Accelerating Access to Critical Therapies for ALS Act. And the clerk will please report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3537 to direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services to support research on and expand.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read.
Madam Chair?
The chair recognizes herself for 5 minutes to strike the last word and speak on the bill and its aims. The act, pardon me, oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Rogers needs to offer the aims.
Oh, okay. Well, I will speak on the bill then, okay? Thank you. The Act for ALS is the most popular bill in the United States House of Representatives with 326 bipartisan co-sponsors. This is because of the hard work and the tenacity of the bill's sponsors, Representatives Quigley and Fortenberry, as well as the ALS advocates who will not allow Congress to ignore their suffering. ALS affects 1 in 300 people. Within 3 years of diagnosis, most patients die because they're robbed of the ability to move, speak, and breathe. In the United States, every 90 minutes, someone dies from ALS. We can't treat this disease as business as usual. We have to increase funding for science, for clinical trials, for expanded access, and accelerated regulatory approval for ALS treatments to move the needle on this dreaded disease that is truly a death sentence. The Act for ALS meets this urgent need by helping more patients receive experimental treatments through expanded access programs. The expanded access program is especially critical for ALS patients because more than 50% of people with ALS do not qualify for clinical trials and are often given no treatment options whatsoever. Importantly, as we heard at our hearing from Harvard's Dr. Merit Sudkovic, expanded access programs do not prevent or interfere with controlled, well-designed clinical trials. Instead, expanded access is for people who are ineligible for existing clinical trials. So this legislation, along with the changes made in the AINS, allows for more people to have expanded access to experimental treatment in parallel with well-designed clinical trials. Dr. Sudkovic also testified about how expanded access can help researchers learn about ALS. In the expanded access program she runs at Harvard, she was able to research how to best dose the medication as well as record improved patient functions from the treatment. This legislation and its aims provides a framework to allow NIH and FDA to benefit from this type of research from the expanded access programs. Colleagues, this is a transformational bill to make sure people with ALS are given treatment options and something they all deserve. They all deserve. They all deserve to be able to hope. So I urge all of my colleagues to support the bill. I salute the sponsors, the bipartisan sponsors. Again, Mr. Quigley, Mr. Fortenberry, all those that have co-sponsored the legislation. And thank again the witnesses that traveled across the country under really difficult, trying circumstances to be here in this hearing room to give their moving testimony. Oh, he's here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to acknowledge that our colleague, Mr. Quigley, is here in the hearing room. Thank you for your superb work. And this is a big step, and we may not be able to hear the applause across the country, but it's there. we made a promise during the hearings on both sides of the aisle, and I don't know how many of you read the comments that were online. They were so heartfelt. I mean, I cried reading them. So with that, colleagues, I know everyone is going to vote for this, and bravo to the committee members. And again, Mr. Quigley, thank you for being here today to witness this, and to Mr. Fortenberry. They really have been so undeterred. They have worked and worked and worked and worked. This is a huge accomplishment on behalf of the community in our country that has really captured the sincere attention and action of the Congress. Now, let's see, who would like to be recognized? For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Okay. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes. No? Oh, we have to get the title of it, yeah. The clerk needs, would the clerk please report the amendment?
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3537 offered by Mrs. Rogers of Washington. Strike all after the enactment.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment will be dispensed with, and Ms. McMorris Rogers is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to join in saluting all the members, the advocates, the individuals that are battling this dreaded disease in their advocacy on this legislation. This is a bipartisan amendment that I'm offering with Chairman Pallone that incorporates feedback that we received from HHS and will require the Government Accountability Office, GAO, to conduct a study on the implementation of the grant programs created under the bill. I want to thank Chairman Pallone as well as the sponsors, Mr. Quigley, who's in the room, Mr. Fortenberry. Truly, they've led an extraordinary effort in the entire ALS community for working together to get this bill where it is today. As we've heard from our witnesses back in July, ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases are life-altering. They impact both patients and their families' lives in unimaginable ways. Yet despite the challenges they face, the patients and caregivers we heard from were filled with hope. Hope that future generations may not have to suffer the same obstacles they face in accessing promising treatments. Hope that one day there will be a cure. Hope for life-saving treatments and cures is here in America. We cannot forget that. We've led the world in discovering and developing breakthrough medicines. America is where hope becomes a reality. This legislation builds on our success as a leader in medical ingenuity. It will help us further understand the neurodegenerative diseases so that we can advance in our efforts to find new cures and treatments. It will facilitate access to promising investigational therapies for those who otherwise would have had no options. It provides another reason to feel hopeful about our future. I urge a yes vote on this amendment and on the passage of the underlying bill. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Are there other members seeking recognition to speak on the amendment?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
I move to strike the last word.
he's on the internet.
Another voice from heaven. Mr. Curtis of Utah is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member. I speak with a little bit of hesitancy because of the personal nature of this. I lost a good neighbor about 4 years ago to ALS. Surprisingly, a gentleman moved in across the street from me a little over a year ago, and he passed away. And a very good friend about 2.5 blocks away passed away last year. And last Saturday, I visited a good friend for the very last time, Osborne, who passed away Monday from ALS. Warren and I and our families had vacationed together. We had worked together. We had served in the community together. And Warren was unique because he had near unlimited resources. He was what I would call a super entrepreneur. He had the ability to fly around the world for treatments and try treatments that he couldn't take here in the United States. Unfortunately, much this time, he was away from his family in the few years that he had left because these treatments were not available in the United States. And of course, to many who suffer from ALS, they have no ability to access these treatments. I feel in many ways that we've let these good people down, that these treatments that show some promise are unavailable to them, and they find themselves, as we heard in the hearing, so desperate for anything that would give them hope. So I speak in great support of this bill, and not just this bill, but a continuing commitment of me and I expect all of us to find more answers for our good friend, to make sure that we stop losing them to this very terrible disease. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield? It's Kathy.
Yes. Hi, Kathy. Yes, I yield to.
Thank you.
Yes.
I too just wanted to recognize and thank the leadership of Chairman Anna Eshoo in making sure that this legislation is passed and that we are giving options to our ALS patients. I meant to do that earlier, so just appreciate your commitment and leadership in getting the job done. I yield back, or I yield, yeah, back to the.
Yes.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you to both members for your beautiful comments. Are there any other members that seek recognition to speak on the amendment? Not hearing or seeing any that seek recognition. There's no further debate. We'll proceed to a vote on the amendment. All those in, it's the E&C. A vote on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor of the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3537 will signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Lots of ayes. That's music to everyone's ears. Is there anyone that dares to vote no? Not hearing any. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3537 is agreed to. The question now occurs on favorably forwarding H.R. 3537 is amended to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding 3537 is amended to the full committee will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Hallelujah. All right. Do I have to read this? Who invented all of this? Yes, all right. Do I need to say this? H.R. 3537, as amended, is forwarded to the full committee. Wonderful work, members. That's a big one. Okay, now, the chair calls up 4555, the Oral Health Literacy and Awareness